Hi and welcome to our new YouTube tutorial. In this video we're going to be creating a CSS animation project. The project is going to be a little one, but I think it will be interesting and you will learn some new stuff about CSS animations. Let's go ahead and describe the project. We have here an animated ball that is moving up and down. It's hitting the squares which are coming from the left and right sides. Also, we have here a moving background which makes an illusion that the ball moves up. Okay, so that's it about this project. Let's go ahead and start to create it. I have a new folder on the desktop called ball animation, in which I have another folder for the background image. Let's go ahead and open this folder in VS Code and then create our working files. We will have just two files, index.html and style.css. Let's open the index.html file and create a basic HTML document. I'm going to use an exclamation mark and then we have to hit tab or enter. Okay, so first of all, let's change the title. I'm going to insert here ball animation. After that, I'm going to link the CSS file. So let's open link tag and insert here style.css. Okay, finally, let's go ahead and run the project to the browser. For that, I'm going to use one of the VS Code packages called live server. And before we start to write the code, I'm going to place the editor and the browser side by side, like so. Okay, so at first, I'm going to create an HTML markup. Let's open div tag with the class wrapper. It will include the entire content. So inside the wrapper, I'm going to have three different div elements. The first two div elements will be for the squares. As for the third div element, it's going to be the ball. So let's open div tag with the class block. It will be the common class name, but besides that, we need individual class. Let's say block 1. Let's duplicate this line of code and change the class name. We need block 2. Okay, let's open another div tag with the class ball. Alright, that's it about the HTML markup. Right now nothing is visible here because all the elements are empty. So now it's time to start to write some CSS. First of all, let's create some default and common styles for every element. Let's select an asterisk. I'm going to get rid of default margin and padding. Let's set both properties to 0. And also I'm going to set box sizing to border box. Okay, and that's it about the default styles. Throughout this project, we're going to use rem as the measurement unit. By default, 1 rem is equal to 16 pixels. I want it to be 10 pixels, so for that, we have to decrease the font size of the HTML element. We need to set it to 62.5%. Okay, after that, let's go ahead and style the body element. I'm going to define width and height. Let's set width to 100%. As for the height, I'm going to make it 100% of the viewport, so let's set it to 100 VH. Next, I'm going to take care of the wrapper. Let's select this element and define width. I'm going to set width to 70 rem. Okay, so I'm going to make the wrapper square, and for that I will use one of the CSS properties called aspect ratio. If I set it to 1, then it will mean that the wrapper will get a height equal to 70 rem. But if I change the width, let's say to 80 rem, then the height will be 80 rem as well. So I think this property is a very convenient one. Let's go ahead and define the background. Let's set background image to URL, and we need the path of the image. We have folder called images and we have to select bg.png. So as you can see here, we have the background. Right now that's it about the wrapper. Before we move on, I just want to place the wrapper in the center of the page. For that, let's use CSS grid. I'm going to set display to grid, and then in order to place the element in the center, we need place items center. Okay, so as you can see, the element is placed in the center perfectly. Let's move on and start to work on the boxes, those squares which appear from the left and right sides. As you know, they have a common class block, so let's go ahead and select it and define the width. I'm going to set width to 18 rem. I want those elements to be squares, so let's use again aspect ratio with the value 1, and also change the background color. I'm going to use here RGB value 51, 184, 184. Okay, so we have here the squares. Let's go ahead and define the positions. I'm going to set the position to absolute. Then, in order to position the element according to the wrapper, let's set the wrapper's position to a relative. After that, I'm going to define the positions for the squares separately. So let's select block 1 and define top and right properties. I'm going to set top position to 16 rem. As for the right position, it's going to be 44 rem. Then I'm going to duplicate this code. Let's change the class name. We need block 2. The top position is going to be the same. As for the right position, I'm going to set it to 8 rem. Alright, so as you can see, the elements are positioned correctly. Now it's time to take care of the ball. So let's select it. First of all, I'm going to define the width. Let's set it to 12 rem. We need the same height for the ball, so I'm going to use again property called aspect ratio with the value 1. And then let's change the background color. Let's use RGB 2, 5, 5, 1, 1, 8, 1, 1, 8. Okay, let's make this element rounded using border radius with the value 50%. And then let's take care of its position. I'm going to set position to absolute. And then I'm going to define left and top properties. Left position is going to be 29 rem. As for the top position, it's going to be 22 rem. Alright, that's it about the ball. And now we can start the funny part, the animations. Let's start with the squares. Let's take a look at the finished project. So as you can see, the elements come from the top in order. At first the left square comes down and then the right one. Besides that, the opacity of the squares is changing during the animation. Okay, let's go ahead and create the CSS keyframes in which we have to define the CSS rules that will be applied to the squares during the animation. So the keyframes will consist of different steps. I'm going to call it block 1 anim. So from 0% to 30%, at the starting part of the animation, the square should move from top to bottom, and also we have to change its opacity. So at 0%, I'm going to use transform with the function translate y. As the value, I'm going to use here minus 38 rem. And also we have to define here rotate z function with 0 degree. And as I said, we need opacity to be 0.5. Alright, at 30% the element moves down at its default position, still without rotation. So we need here transform, translate y with 0, and again rotate z with 0. Okay, so the next step is going to be 40%. At this step, square will remain its position, but it will rotate, and also we will increase the opacity. So at 40%, we need transform, translate y with 0, and rotate z with the value minus 180 degrees. And also we need to increase the opacity. Let's make it 1. From 40% to the next step, to 45%, we need these same styles because during this time the ball should hit the square and we should wait for it. So let's place here comma and then add here 45%. Alright, after that, this square should move down and disappear. So the next step is going to be 55%. At this step, we need transform, translate Y with the value 38 rem. And also we need the rotation, rotate Z minus 180 degrees. And also we need to decrease the opacity. Let's set it to 0.5. Okay, so we need this square to remain in this position by the end of the animation. So we need the same styles from 55% to 100%. So let's add here 100%. Alright, actually the animation is ready. So let's go ahead and run it. For the first square, we need animation property. Then we have to define the name of the animation. Block 1 anim. The next value is going to be the duration, 5 seconds. Next, we need to run the animation infinitely. So we have to insert here infinite. And I'm going to make the animation linear. So as you can see, the animation is running, but actually that's not what we want. Right now the element is rotating according to the center, because by default the origin of the transformation is set to center. In our case, we need to make it bottom right. So let's use transform origin and make it bottom right. So now as you can see, the square moves correctly. Once it moves away from the background, we need it to be hidden. For that, we can assign overflow hidden to the wrapper. Okay, so that's it about the first square. We need the same for the second one as well. Actually, I'm going to duplicate the entire keyframes. Let's change the name. We need block to anim. Next, we need to get rid of the minus signs from here, because we need to rotate the second square to the opposite direction. And besides that, we have to change the origin of the transformation. In this case, we need bottom left. Finally, let's define the animation property. We need to change here the name of the animation. It's going to be block to anim. And besides that, we need here a delay time for the second square. Let's make it 2.5 seconds. Actually, that's not the final version of this animation. We will make here a slight change once we take care of the ball animation. So let's go ahead and start to work on it. Let's take a look at the finished project. So as you can see, the ball is moving up and down, and also it changes its shape slightly. So let's go ahead and create CSS keyframes for the ball. I'm going to call it ball anim. So in the ball animation, we will have 5 different steps. From 0% to 45%, the ball will move up, and also it will shrink slightly. So at 0%, I'm going to use transform, translate Y with the value minus 20 rem. And also, in order to shrink the element slightly, I'm going to use scale function. We need here to pass 0.8 as the value of the X direction. As for the Y direction, it's going to be 1. Then from 45% to the next step, the ball should move down, and also we should change the scale. So at 45%, we need transform, translate Y with value 0, and also we need to change the scale. It's going to be 0.9 and 1. The next step is going to be 50%. On that step, the ball should move down, and also we have to shrink the ball, but in this case vertically. So at 50%, we need here transform, translate Y with value 2 rem, and the scale is going to be 1 and 0.7. After that, we have to move the ball up and shrink it horizontally. So at 60%, I'm going to use transform, translate Y with the value minus 10 rem, As for the scale, it's going to be 0.9 and 1. Alright, so after that we need the last step. We have to move the ball up and also shrink it horizontally. So at 100% we need transform, translate y with the value minus 20 rem. As for the scale, it's going to be 0.8 and 1. Okay, so the keyframes are ready. Let's go ahead and apply those rules to the element. So let's use animation property. We need here the name of the animation, ball anim. Then the duration is going to be 2.5 seconds. Also, the animation should run infinitely, and it's going to be linear. So as you can see, the ball is animating, but it does not hit the squares. We need to match the times here. I'm going to add a little delay time to the animation. It's going to be 0.9 seconds. So now, as you can see, the ball touches the squares. At a glance, everything works fine, but if we reload the page, the ball and the right square will display like in a paused condition, which doesn't look nice. So we need to make the entire animation dynamic, no matter if we reload the page or not. In order to do that, we can manipulate the delay time. In general, if we use the negative values, then the animation delay property will accelerate the animation. Let's take a look at the finished project. If we reload the page, you will see the right square moving away from the background and also the ball moving up from its default position. So we need to change the delay times for the second square. It's going to be minus 2.5 seconds. Now if we reload the page, then you will see the right square moving away from the wrapper. As for the ball, if we add here the minus sign, then the ball will be animating once we reload the page. But now as you can see, it doesn't hit the squares. So I'm going to increase the delay time. Let's set it to 1.5 seconds. Alright, so that's it regarding the animations of the ball and the squares. Now we have to take care of the background. Before we start to work on the animation, I'm going to add a couple of background styles to the wrapper. We need to define the size of the background. This property will take two values. The width of the background will be auto. As for the height, I'm going to set it to 70 rem. In order to make it clear, I'm going to add a border to the wrapper. Let's make it 1 rem, solid and red. And besides that, I'm going to define background repeat with the value no repeat. So now if I change the values of the background size, let's say to 50 rem and 60 rem, you will see that the width and height of the background are changed. So that's the way how the background size property works. Let's get back here, auto and 70 rem. We used here auto because we maintain the quality of the image. It doesn't shrink. So now we need to animate the background. During the animation, we need to move the entire background down, and I'm going to do that using the property called background position. First of all, let's create keyframes with the name bg anim. So at 0%, I'm going to set background position to center and 0. As for the 100%, the background position is going to be center and 70 rem. So the keyframes are ready. Let's apply these rules to the wrapper. Use animation property with the name background anim. Then the duration is going to be 5 seconds. And also we need here infinite and linear. So now, as you can see, the background is moving down. Once it moves, then it disappears, and we don't need that. So we need to repeat the background, but in this case, according to the y-axis. So the background repeat property is going to be repeat y. So now, as you can see, everything works perfectly. Let's get rid of this border from here. And also I want to add one little thing to the squares. Let's add to them a little shadow effect. let's use box shadow with the values 0.2 rem, 0.2 rem, then 0.4 rem. As the color, I'm going to use AAA. Actually, the shadow is going to be inside of the element, so we need here inset. And I want the shadow all around the square, so we need here other values as well, minus 0.2 rem, minus 0.2 rem, 0.4 rem, then the color AAA, and again inset. Okay, so finally with this project we are done. I hope it was interesting and you enjoyed it. If you like this video, then please thumbs up, comment below, share it, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell to get notified on coming tutorials. See you next time.